It's been a week since Donald Trump became the 45th President of the United States. And since that time, he's taken a lot of action on critical issues. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with historian and author Jack Bass. Jack, it is so good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
We saw each other last Friday night. I was at Starbucks late editing Terry Bass's interview, and I didn't get out there till 10:45. And right before then, you came past and I said hello to you.
Yeah.
And since that time, how are you?
I'm fine, doing fine.
Yeah.
Keeping busy.
I see. Well, let me take you to the obvious. Obviously, there's a lot of uproar about certain decisions that President Donald Trump has made. This headline was on Twitter from NBC 12 News in Richmond. It says this: Department of Homeland Security to enforce President Trump's executive orders regarding refugees. Another headline: Trump orders ISIS plan, gives Steve Bannon role in revamped National Security Council. When you hear headlines like that, what does that tell you about the state of the union right now?
Well, I think that things are very, very disconcerting to very many people. That Donald Trump seems to have little regard for facts, that seems to have little knowledge of history, and seems to have little understanding of what the role of the president is.
Mm. When you look back, maybe I would say 20, 30 presidents from 40 years ago to now, what sticks out to you about him besides just what you just said?
Well, that's really it. I mean, we haven't had him. He's different from any other president in terms of, in part of it, just his ignorance of what a president does, of how it is accomplished, and he seems to have no understanding at all of the Constitution of the United States. On Friday he issues this ban against people coming into the country because of where they're coming from, and he held them overnight and so forth. And on Saturday there are huge protests all over the country about it, because there are huge numbers of people who are concerned about freedom and democracy in the United States and the respect for law.
Speaking of which, I've seen a lot of comments on Facebook and social media, and people are riled up about this. Some people are saying, your own ancestors are immigrants, Trump. How dare you? Another one: if you voted for Trump or supported him in any way, then please do us both a favor and delete me as a friend on Facebook and in real life. You are trash just like him. Another one: if you are a green holder, lawful permanent resident outside of the U.S., please reach out to an immigrant attorney before you travel back to the U.S. When you hear that, what do you say?
Well, what we have something to really appreciate is we have federal judges who understand the Constitution.
Sure. And
within hours after that whole thing came into effect, one of them put a stop on it.
Right.
And that's part of the whole role of the courts in this country.
Mm.
And so we have fairness and balance.
Yes. Let me take you from Washington to Columbia, South Carolina. As you know, the transfer of power in the state government took place on Tuesday. As you know, Governor McMaster is now the 117th governor of South Carolina. What does that tell you about the next 4 years for South Carolina as far as him as governor?
Well, he'll be governor for the next 2 years, and then there'll be an election.
Right.
And, Henry McMaster's very long experience in state government, very experienced in Republican politics. He's
Right.
run 6 campaigns. He's won 3 and he's lost 3. And we'll just see how it all goes with him. He's not a reactionary in the sense, he understands government is what I'm saying. He's not going to be any Donald Trump by any means, and I think he will govern fairly well, in terms of not doing anything drastic. I may not agree with everything he does, and I probably won't. But there'll be some things I probably will.
Speaking of governor, let's go back to Nikki Haley. Obviously, she was governor of South Carolina for 6 years. When you look at what she has accomplished and the things that she wanted to do, what letter grade would you give her?
And what she wanted to do and what she accomplished, I'd probably give her an A or an A minus. Mm. Now, there's some things she didn't do. like except the Medicaid expansion and the Affordable Care Act, which would have given several hundred thousand people in South Carolina, including many children, full medical care and coverage at no cost to the state. Instead of that money went to other states. That would be one thing. And the other thing, I think her said she would not increase any gasoline tax,
Right.
Potentially blocking any improvement of the state's crumbling roads. Those I think were shortcomings, but what she did achieve, taking down the Confederate battle flag was a big deal. And her whole reaction to the tragedy at Emmanuel.
Sure.
I don't think anybody could have handled it any better.
Mm.
And I think she should be much congratulated on how she handled that. And she also, the governor's a fairly weak governor in this state.
Mm.
So beyond having the veto, it's not a whole lot of power there. But I think overall, I think she did a very credible job.
Mm. You talk about weak governor in South Carolina. Obviously, the power lays really in the hands of him, Hugh Leatherman. When you think of him, what sticks out to you?
Hugh Leatherman, I think, is a pretty solid guy, actually. He has a lot of power. He has more power than any other politician. But he's not a reactionary. And actually, because of research I've done in the past, I know this. If it weren't for Hugh Leatherman, combined with Glenn McConnell when he was in the legislature and legislative leader,
Right.
and between the two of them, they played the key role in Boeing coming to Charleston.
Mm.
And that's not a well-known fact,
Wow.
but it is a fact.
Yeah, okay, let's move from Charleston, really from Columbia to Charleston it is, and let's take you to Broad Street. As you know, John Tecklenburg is the mayor of Charleston and has been for a year now. When you look at his accomplishments, what plays in your mind?
I think John Tecklenburg has done a good job. I really do. I think he's following 40 years of Joe Riley's leadership was a big undertaking and a big task. But I think overall, he's provided very good leadership.
Mm. Wow.
He's gotten some federal money for certain projects.
Right.
And he wasn't in favor of all these hotel expansions, but he got overridden by city council. But he's taken some other steps about zoning that will affect that issue.
Mm. Wow. So when you look at his 4 years, from really now until 4 years later, what can you say about John Tecklenburg as mayor?
Well, I can't predict the future.
Well, let me ask you this. Obviously, there's issues with 526 and obviously hotel moratorium. When you look at that, what letter grade would you give him as far as that?
It depends on how one looks at 526. Some people think it should be finished, and some people don't.
Mm.
So he's taken a position on it. You can agree or disagree with him, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong or right. It depends on one's perspective.
Mm.
So people who disagree about completing 526 have one position, and those think it should be completed.
Right.
And if you have a real hurricane, I would be one of those who think, I have mixed feelings about it a little bit. I understand the other side, but I really think it's needed if you end up with a huge evacuation, and with the highways being what they are, and you have a huge evacuation because of a hurricane, and people from Kiowa and other places on Johns Island and all, it's going to be really important.
Yeah. You talk about issues and differences between, people and really the politicians with 526. Let me ask you, when did politics creep into this particular discussion?
Well, it's always been there.
Mm.
I mean, it's always been there in the sense of, funding for 526. It's too long a story about the whole history of it. I know a fair amount of it, not all of it.
Okay.
But as it developed, a lot of conservationists were opposed to it. and a lot of other people, and some people had financial interest in its completion. But you also had just a lot of people who live way out. And it was certainly, and then you have people on Johns Island who don't want the whole island to be developed because they think it's, they cherish it as for its agricultural production.
Mm.
So it's a complicated issue.
Yeah, you're right about that. Well, Jack Bass, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
All right.
Good to see you as always.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.